day to each and everyone. My name is Karen Kalolo Maarat, 2AB Psychology A from University of Southern Mindanao. Today, I'm gonna report the Chapter 4, Attention and Consciousness. Before we will proceed to the main topic of my discussion, is all about consciousness, allow me to read some of the questions we will explore in this chapter. First, can we actively process information even if we are not aware of doing so? If so, what do we do and how we do it? Second, what are some of the functions of attention? Third, what are some theories cognitive psychologists have developed to explain attentional process? Fourth, what have cognitive psychologists learned about attention by studying the human brain? What is consciousness? It refers to your individual awareness of your unique thoughts, memories, feelings, sensations, and environments. Essentially, your consciousness is your awareness of yourself and the world around you. This awareness is subjective and unique to you. If you can describe something you are experiencing in words, then it is part of your consciousness. Not everything we do, reason, and perceive is necessarily conscious. We may be unaware of the stimuli that alter our perceptions and judgments, or unable to come up with the right word in a sentence, even though we know that we know the right word. For an example, in one moment, you may be focused on reading this article. Your consciousness may then shift to the memory of a conversation you had earlier with your coworker. Next, you might notice how uncomfortable your chair is, or maybe you are mentally planning dinner. This ever-shifting stream of thoughts can change dramatically from one moment to the next, but your experience of it seems smooth and effortless. Extra notes. Thalamus, hypothalamus, and pons are important for consciousness. Consciousness includes being aware of sensory inputs. Thalamus is at stage in sensing since it is relay center. Thalamus projects information to basal ganglia, cerebellum, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, parietal lobe, and etc. Pons is important because it is a bridge of information processing. Hypothalamus is also important because it is about our survival, and if we don't survive, we don't have consciousness. Basal ganglia is important for spatial consciousness. And we will proceed to the next topic, the consciousness of the mental processes. No serious investigator of cognition believes that people have conscious access to the very simple mental processes. For an example, none of us has a good idea of the means by which we recognize whether a printed letter such as A is an uppercase or a lowercase one. But now, consider more complex processing. How conscious are we of our complex mental processes? Cognitive psychologists have differing views on how this question is best answered. From the first view, Erikson and Simon 1984, is that people have quite good access to their complex mental processes. Simon and his colleagues, for an example, have used protocol analysis in analyzing people solving of problems, such as chess problems and so-called cryptarithmic problems, in which one has to figure out what numbers substitute for letters in a mathematical computation problem. These investigations have suggested to Simon and his colleagues that people have quite good conscious access to their complex information processes. A second view, it is that people's access to their complex mental processing is not very good. Nesbitt and Walso 1977. In this view, people may think they know how they solve complex problems, but their thoughts are frequently erroneous. According to Nesbitt and Walson, we typically are conscious of the products of our thinking, but only vaguely conscious, if at all, of the process of thinking. For an example, suppose you decide to buy one model of bicycle over another. You certainly will know the product of the decision which model you bought. But you may have only a vague idea of how you arrive at that decision. Indeed, according to this view, you may believe you know why you made the decision, but that belief is likely to be flawed. This stage, advertisers depend on the second view. because they try to manipulate your thoughts and feelings toward a product so that whatever your conscious thoughts may be, your unconscious ones will lead you to buy their product over that of a competitor. The essence of the second use that people's conscious access to their thought processes and even their control over their thought processes is quite minimal. Our next topic is all about preconscious processing. Information that is available for cognitive processing but that currently lies outside of the conscious awareness exists at the preconscious level of awareness. In Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory of personality, the preconscious mind is a part of the mind that corresponds to ordinary memory. These memories are not conscious, but we can retrieve them to conscious awareness at any time. It includes stored memory. For example, if asked to spontaneously describe our bedrooms, though we may not be in the exact environment or thinking of the room of the exact time, we can easily describe how it looks and its contents. Another example, when you comb your hair while getting ready for a first date, you are still able to do the combing, although your mind in all likelihood will be completely elsewhere, namely on the date. The information about how to comb your hair is available to you even you are not consciously combing. Information that is available for cognitive processing but that currently lies outside conscious awareness exists at the preconscious level of awareness. Preconscious processing lies on priming, TOT phenomenon or tip of the tongue phenomenon, and blind sight. First, we will tackle about priming. How can we study things that currently lie outside conscious awareness? Psychologists have solved this problem by studying a phenomenon known as priming. Priming is the processing of the certain stimuli that is facilitated by prior presentation of the same or similar stimuli. Sometimes we are aware of the prime, sometimes we are not. Even if we are not aware of the prime will influence the processing of the target. Suppose, for an example, when someone is talking to you about how much he has enjoyed watching television since buying a satellite dish. He speaks at length about the virtues of satellite dishes. Later, you hear the word dish. You are probably more likely to think of a satellite dish as opposed to a dish served at dinner than is someone who did not hear the prior conversation about satellite dishes. Priming is the psychological term in which the stimulus influences the response of the responder. For instance, when we say the color apple, it will evoke a faster response to the red color, fruit apple, or Apple's iPhone, depending upon the person's association with that particular word. Priming, however, does not have to be visual. Priming effects can be demonstrated using oral materials as well. Experiments exploring auditory priming reveal the same behavioral effects as visual priming. Using neuroimaging methods, investigators have discovered that similar brain areas are involved in both types of priming. An interesting application of auditory priming was used with patients under anesthesia. While under anesthesia, these patients were presented list of words. After awakening from anesthesia, the patients were asked yes or no questions and word stem completion questions about the words they heard. The patients performed a chance on the yes or no questions. They reported no conscious knowledge of the words. However, on the word stem completion task, patients showed evidence of priming. The patients frequently completed the word stems with the items they were presented while they were under anesthesia. These findings revealed that even when the patient has absolutely no recollection of an oral event, that event will still can affect performance. Our next topic is all about the tip of the tongue phenomenon. How often does it happen that you're trying to recall something, say a name or a place, but can't literally find the right word for it? Most of us probably have experienced the tip of the tongue phenomenon, in which you try to remember something that is stored in memory but that cannot readily be retrieved. Psychologists have tried to generate experiments that measure this phenomenon. The tip of the tongue phenomenon is also known, which is French for almost seen. This correctly describes the feeling where one can almost, but not quite, retrieve the exact memory. I'm sure that all of us are experienced players when it comes to forgetting the word for something, even though you actually know what it is and what it looks, sounds, tastes, feels like. A student is attempting a question in his midterm history examination, one which he has read just before the test. However, try as he might, he can't remember the answer to that question. Though he knows what it is about and what page it is on his textbook, he can remember everything about the answer except the target word phrase that is searching his memory for. Another example, your friend is trying to describe a scene from a movie she recently watched. The scene seems familiar to you and you realize you've watched this movie before. You remember the story, the music, the ending, the director, but not the name of the movie. This is an annoying example of a tip of the tongue phenomenon when you never remember what you want to write when you need it. Later, when you've stopped bothering to remember what the name of the movie is, the answer comes to you. The next topic is all about the people blind can see or the blind sight. Lesions in some areas of the visual cortex. Patients claim to be blind. When forced to guess about a stimulus in the blind region, they correctly guess locations and orientations of objects at above chance levels. Similarly, when forced to reach for objects in the blind area, cortically blind participants will nonetheless pre-adjust their hands appropriate for their size, shape, orientations, and 3D location of that object in the blind field. Yet, they fail to show voluntary behavior such as reaching for a glass of water in the blind region, even when they are thirsty. Some visual processing seems to occur when participants have no conscious awareness of visual sensations. DV, the patient was blind on the left side of his visual field as an unfortunate result of an operation. That is, each eye had a blind spot on the left side of its visual field. Consistent with this damage, DV reported no awareness of any objects placed on his left side or any events that took place on this side. But despite his unawareness of vision on this side, there was evidence of vision. He performed at levels that were significantly better than chance. In other words, he saw despite his unawareness of seeing. This is known implicit sight, but it is not applied to all blind people. The study of attention and consciousness highlights several key themes in cognitive psychology. First is the structures versus processes. The brain contains various structures and systems of structures, such as the reticular activating system that generate the process that contribute to attention. Sometimes, the relationship between structure and process is not entirely clear, and it is the job of cognitive psychologists to better understand it. For an example, blind sight is a phenomenon in which a process occurs, sight in the absence of the structures in the brain that would seem too necessary for the sight to take place. Next is the validity of causal inferences versus ecological validity. Should research on vigilance be conducted in a laboratory to achieve careful experimental control? Or should the research of high-stakes vigilance situations be studied ecologically? For an example, a study in which military officers are examining radar screens for possible attacks against the country must have a high degree of ecological validity to ensure that the results apply to the actual situation in which the military officers find themselves. The stakes are too high to allow slippage. Yet, when vigilance in the actual life situation is studied, one cannot and would not want to make attacks against the country happen. Therefore, it is necessary to use simulations that are realistic as possible. In this way, the ecological validity of conclusions drawn can be ensured. The next topic is all about biological versus behavioral methods. Blind sight is a case of a curious and as yet poorly understood link. The biology does not appear to be there to generate the behavior. Another interesting example is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Physicians now have available a number of drugs that treat ADHD. These treatments enable children as well as adults to focus better on tasks that they need to get done. But the mechanisms by which the drugs work are still poorly understood. Indeed, somewhat paradoxically, most of the drugs used to treat ADHD are stimulants, which, when given to children with ADHD, appear to calm them down.